God were speaking to us today, what new word would we need to hear? Would we be like the tax collector, humble enough to understand that in our daily living there is always room for change and new understanding, a different way of entering into life and into the relationships we have with one another every day? Or would we be like this Pharisee, so full of himself that he can't get out of his own way? I'm very interested in the political debate that occurs in these days. It's surprising to me that not just one candidate, but both candidates begin almost every comment with I. I will do this. I will accomplish that. And it's full of me and not a sense of service. Think about that for a moment. Not either of these candidates is going to be able to accomplish their agenda without learning how to work with other people. It's not totally about either of them. It's about how our system as a nation functions. It would be so refreshing to hear someone say, as I work with the Senate or as I work with the House of Representatives, here are the things I think we would like to accomplish as a people. We haven't heard that in many, many years, not just in the current political climate. It's interesting that one of the candidates wrote a book, It Takes a Village. What did that all mean? It means that people must work together to encourage the children and bring them into the fullness of life that we hope all of the children will have. And yet, in the discourse about politics, it's all about me. It seems, friends, that we live in a world where too many people who are in positions of leadership think it's all about me. As a matter of fact, it is not. And that's what Jesus was trying to say when this parable was told. If we cannot be humble enough to realize that we need each other, that there are gifts we share with each other that encourage and build us up and help us to experience a better life, then we isolate ourselves from each other and we end up in a great sadness. Paul, when he wrote this letter to Timothy, was very aware that he had given his life as a servant of God. He knew that he lived in a hostile world, just as Jesus must have known when he shared this parable that there were those in the crowd who heard what he had to say who were hostile. Sometimes the word we need to hear is not comforting. Sometimes the word we need to hear challenges us in a way that forces us to look within instead of looking without. For many years as a pastor, I have tried to help people in our churches to understand that we don't have a hierarchy of behavior where one sin is worse than another. Sin is a word that describes the human condition of rebellion and brokenness. If we only understood that we all share a condition in terms of our relationship with the Creator, we can get away from trying to make judgments about one another about who's better or who's worse than we are. Isn't it interesting that the world loves this hierarchy of things? So what's the worst thing a person can do? That's at the top of the list. And then we move down from there as if there were gradations of brokenness. If we are broken, we are broken. If our condition is one of alienation, it is our condition of alienation. And that's exactly what Jesus was trying to say as he moved attention from the Pharisee to the tax collector. This tax collector knew his condition. He didn't have to spell out a long list of behaviors that he had done to offend God. He knew that he was alienated, and he knew that he needed healing. He needed to be restored to right relationship. And we have for generations, taking the words of Jesus, understood that the condition of alienation can only be cured when we humble ourselves before the grace and love of God. A tax collector of all people, probably the most despised occupation of Jesus' day, because tax collectors were known to take advantage of their authority and their power. And so if they saw someone who had a little too much money, they would add a burden on and pocket what they had taken. It was a common practice. Why do you think Zacchaeus in the New Testament made such a surprise when Jesus asked him to come down and eat with him? He was one of those despised people who had power to exact from folk extra money for their own pocket. And when Zacchaeus had lunch with Jesus, he came to himself. And he said, if I have taken advantage of anyone in my career, I will not only restore what I did, but I will give more than that back again. Somehow Jesus got him to look at his condition, not his behavior. Because our behaviors, you see, friends, are the result of our conditions. And when we are separated from each other or separated from God, then our behaviors begin to reflect that in pushing people away, in saying words that are hurtful, in doing things that build a greater gap between us and them. And that is true about what happens in our relationship with God. Jesus wanted those who were hearing his words to understand that condition can be healed. And when that condition of separation or brokenness or alienation is healed, there comes to us a new way of living. And our words begin to be encouraging to other people. Our understanding of the pain and suffering of others takes on a whole different tone. And we begin to see that God is seeking to bless each and every one of us in some way, and to bring to us the new life which Jesus Christ wanted the world to experience. Jesus said, I didn't come to destroy the law. I came to fulfill it. But the Pharisees didn't hear that at all. Because in fulfilling the law, Jesus was talking about how the love of God can really heal our brokenness and our alienation. When you know that God truly cares and loves about you, it somehow transforms us into lovers and carers for others. This tax collector went away justified. That is, God saw in this tax collector the possibilities that were not present in the Pharisee. How would you stand in the holy place and list your attributes? Oh, Lord, look at me. This is what I've done. And you list off a long list of things that make you look better than the person next to you. Do you think God truly sees that? God sees our condition, and it's a condition that each and every one of us has. Because we all know what brokenness and alienation does to relationships. We all know that it interferes with our relationship with our Creator. And we all know that God's love is a restoring and empowering gift to the human family. These parables, you see, are timeless in their import. They are not just about Jesus talking to the religious system of his day. He's talking to every religious system of every generation, and he's talking to every person of faith. You know, it's interesting to me that we used to visit our grandchildren in Rochester, we still do, but when they were little tykes. And when we'd come home and clean the car out, we'd find Bible tracts in there that reminded us we weren't saved. Think about that for a moment. How do we stand in judgment with one another? God says judgment is mine. So how do we live with each other gracefully, mercifully, and faithfully? If it isn't because God restores us, how can we experience restoration with each other? It was an amazement to me that we still have religious issues in the world today that separate us out, divide us from each other, as if one were better than the other. Friends, I think God looks upon our condition, not our religiosity, if you will. What God wants to know is, Do you want to truly experience the presence of God in your life, in your relationships, in the world where you live? And when that happens, what a restoring and renewing presence that becomes for us. You know, friends, I often wonder what we do see. What do you think this Pharisee saw? This Pharisee saw himself as a person of great stature and great importance. You know, in Jesus' day, the Pharisees wanted everybody to know who they were. And so their customary gown would have a purple thread woven through the hem of the garment or through the sleeve, because purple was a color of respect and position in the society. And Jesus said at one time, they love to walk around the marketplace so people can see who they are and bow down to them because they are of such importance. But Jesus also said, who goes away justified? The person who puffs oneself up as somehow better than others? Or is it the person who actually puts oneself at the mercy of God? I have said so many times that if we're truly humble, we know that God is anticipating our need. God is always in front of us, never in back of us, waiting for us to make a mistake and swooping in to bring some kind of punishment. God is out there for you and for me. The mercy and the grace and the love and the forgiveness of God is always waiting for us if we are like this tax collector. Lord, have mercy on me. I am humbled in your sight. I know my condition. And I'm not here to condemn any one of us. I'm just here to say we share a condition. But we also share a Lord who restores us to life, to new life. And isn't that the great news, the good news of the gospel? When Jesus said, I didn't come to destroy the law, I came to fulfill it. What followed that? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and all your might. And love your neighbor as you love yourself. That's an Old Testament mandate from the book of Deuteronomy. It's been there for generations, but sometimes religious institutions and people who get so full of their religion forget that. It's a relationship that brings us life and overcomes death. Because our condition, as Paul would have said, it leads to our demise. But when we are restored, it leads to life. What do you see in yourself? Often we have to look inwardly and say, am I like the tax collector, or am I like the Pharisee? Let's always remember the words of Micah. What does the Lord require of us? To do justice, to love kindness, and to walk